Last night, I dreamt I had kissed a man and had left him right after. Today, I kissed the same man again, but this time it was he who ran away. No, for how long I stood rooted to my spot, eyes glued to the direction he'd disappear, as if he would emerge from the bushes any time. My mind was stubbornly replaying our last encounter, making me unable to think straight. The warmth of his fingertips still seemed to radiate from my skin. I nibbled my bottom lip to soothe their hunger for his kiss. Why did he leave like that? What did he mean when he said those words? The more I tried to think about it, the more confused I got. However, one thing was clear. My grandma was right. Something strange about him. He was a fallen angel. The memory of Grandma sent guilt running into my spine. She would always whisper in my ear, even though she passed, and now she is one of the ancestors that await and guide me on my journey. This was probably the first time I disobeyed her. I couldn't discern why I was so drawn to him. Every time I laid eyes on him, it felt as though I was no longer in control of myself. It was as if I wasn't me anymore. Oh! A frustrated cry escaped my lips. Jake, what did you do to me? A sudden voice pierced through my sobs, making me jump in surprise. I know what it is. I know what's happening with you. Princess Armani, with a swift motion, I turned my head towards the voice to be greeted by the strange, whispering tree. How would you know? I barely tried to conceal my skepticism. It was merely a tree, but it was magical. I know, but that doesn't mean it should know everything. I know everything, dear. After all, they don't call me the tree of wisdom for nothing. I am known as the whispering tree of wisdom. Maybe it really knows. My weariness started to ease down for a bit. Very well. So can you please tell me what's happening, Mr. Whispering Tree? Try hard not to let my voice crack, I asked. In response, the ancient old tree made a sound that came close to a sigh. You, dear Miss Princess, are under a love spell. My dear Princess Armani, you are under a love spell. I laughed at the ridiculous statement, but I did know that there was some truth to what the whispering tree was telling me. I didn't want the tree to know, but maybe the whispering tree, with all its wisdom, knows really what's going on. However, the tree definitely did not find this funny. Nothing else could describe the passion you show for the fallen angel, Jake. His sister Emily has put you under a strong spell. Oh my goodness. Now this I didn't know. But I wanted to know more from the whispering tree. I took in a sharp breath and shook my head with surprise. None of this must be true. This can't be true. You gotta be mistaken. I knew I was being illogical, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. Sister? Yes, said the whispering tree. Both Emily and Jake are one of the most powerful falling angels from the underworld of hell. Jake is in fact the next king of the kingdom of Eban. Eban, my breath hitched as recognition flashed through my brain. Eban was the land of nightmares, the horrific land in Grandma's stories, the place where demons dwell. It must be difficult for you to believe this, but this is in fact true. You haven't accepted. However, no spell would work against your will, my princess. You are a strong woman, and you have the power to resist temptation. You can choose either of the two princesses. But, now listen closely, my dear. Remember that whatever choice that you will make will affect everyone, even in your kingdom. I didn't say anything. I merely stood rooted to my spot, frozen. I actually didn't know what to say, too stupefied to speak. But yet I was longing for more knowledge the whispering tree had to give me. I didn't know what was worse, knowing that Jake was that famous and a ruthless fallen angel, a demon, a prince of demons I'd heard about, or that I was under a love spell conjured by his ruthless sister, Emily. A strange ache was spreading through my chest as I tried to blink back the tears, but I couldn't. That were threatening to rain down my face. Why is all this happening to me, Mr. Whispering Tree of Wisdom? What did I do to deserve this? My voice cracked as I let the tears flow freely from my eyes. That is because you are chosen, my darling. Anger coursed through me as I heard the familiar sentence. For the first time in my life, I despise being chosen. I don't want to be chosen. I just don't. My chest heaved as I shouted each word at the top of my lungs without bothering about the soreness in my throat. All of the chirping of the birds and bustling of animals, listening to the peaceful sound of nature in the forest. Everything seemed to die down, everyone's eyes peering now on me. Everybody trusting me to do the right thing. Guilt and shame filled my heart as I thought about my behavior. Why was I acting this way? The tree was only trying to help me. I shouldn't have behaved so harshly towards her. It's all right. Its voice was empathetic. You might feel that this is too much to handle. Keep in mind that you are the future queen of Econ. Isabel wouldn't trust you with her kingdom if you weren't strong. Its words were soothing, but it wasn't enough to make my frustration die down. Everything was getting too much to handle, but I would always think back to what my grandmother Isabel would tell me. She would always tell me she was my spirit guide. She would send my ancestors along my path. I really miss my grandmother, Isabel. But yes, her heart, the royal queen of the kingdom, she was truly my guide. I should leave. Thank you for your help, whispering tree. I scurried out of the place, breathing heavily to ease the suffocation in my chest as I ran back out of the forest. I didn't notice that I was barefoot as I forgot to take my shoes from the garden. I also didn't notice the sharp crows watching me intently, following me as I returned. I thought that was kind of strange. Why are they following me? Autumn was death itself, but there was a certain beauty to the dying leaves. It was as if they were putting up their best look before tumbling down with the wind. Letting out a dreamy sigh, I allowed myself to get lost in the shade of orange and gold as I sat by my window. So glad to be home from the forest. But now all I can do is think about each word and savor each word the whispering tree of wisdom told me in the garden. Fall was always lovely in Econ. The whole palace garden seemed like an entirety, a different type of paradise. A soft knock on the door made me tear my gaze away from the window. Yes? Darling, it is I. Mother's muffled voice came through the door. Oh, my goddess Venus. She's like a mother to me. She teaches me everything I should know. But in short, I feel there's more that she needs to teach me. Yes, come in, mother. She entered her authoritative aura, making me self-conscious. I hastily tucked the stray strands of my hair behind ears and smothered my pale pink chiffon nightgown. Even at her age, her beauty remained untarnished. Her beautiful smooth skin, her face, and beautiful gray eyes reflected an uncanny fierceness, and her full lips were a thin line. However, dark circles were evident in her face from the recent stressful days that she's been through. Without bothering to properly greet me, she strode towards my large wooden wardrobe. After pulling out a few clothes from it, she tossed it on the bed and said briskly, "Get dressed appropriately. We need to talk. Your family, Grandma, wishes to see you." Knowing that Grandma had died many years ago, but Mother, the goddess, always will have a shrine, an altar made for Grandmother. We would channel her energy. It was as if she was like there. Her spirit would come through, so I know this was a time to commune with the ancestors at the altar. Yes, Mother. We both know what Grandma wanted to talk about, but none of us said a word. I could only imagine how hard it might be for my mother, Goddess Venus. She used to be so cheerful, so lively. However, she had never been the same after my father passed away about 10 years ago. And now the same illness was preying around, lurking. With my mother, I could hear muffled cries from her room every other night, but there was nothing I could do. Grandma was near. Everyone knew that. Mother. Get dressed. I will await outside. With a curt nod, Mother disappeared out of the room, her dark hair swaying down her hips. As she did, a small sigh escaped my lips. Econ is slowly crumbling down into ruin. There is poverty everywhere. Our soil had become tainted with blood, owing to the murders that were occurring every day, the casualties. Yes, our city seemed to be at war. The dark forces, they are trying their best to reign our kingdom. Grandma used to say, according to her, it is the evil forces from the underworld that was causing havoc and confusion in their kingdom, and that their land could only be saved if an alliance is formed with the kingdom of Lamb. Are you done? Mother's sharp voice snapped me out of my thoughts. There I go, daydreaming again, Almost I shouted as I struggled to fit into this dress. I was not ready to commune with Grandma's spirit like this. It was too painful, however. I didn't have a say in it. It wasn't a request. It was an order, of course, from Mother. And you dare not disobey Mother. Now, would you? Grandma Isabel was kind, virtuous, and noble. She was a noble royal queen, even during her final days. I stood before her and bowed, trying hard not to scratch my nose at the scent of her medications. They hung heavy in the air. Grandma said in the most respectable tone I could muster. Seeing me, she smiled. "Armani, my dear, how are you?" It sounded as if she was pronouncing each syllable with utmost difficulty. "I am good, Grandma." "The dress looks good on you, my dear." She nodded at the navy blue gown I was wearing. I changed it from the pink. "Thank you." After our routine exchanges in spirit, she signaled the guards and her doctor to go outside. My mother did. "I need a word with our future queen, Armani." My stomach churned at the word. They all left in a hurry, leaving me there at the altar communing with the spirit of Grandma Isabel. "What is it you wanted to talk about, Grandma?" Seeing the figure, a cloud-like image, I would turn to the mirror and see her image more clearly. I sat on the chair, looked at the mirror. "Armani, dear," she smiled, "my life is coming to an end soon. I can feel it." Her eyes were still warm as she said it, as if she wasn't even already dead. "Armani, dear." I said, "Yes, Grandmother. Please, don't say that. You have to accept it, my dear. I will be no longer here with you. And there is one last thing I have to tell you before I go." She paused, taking a few short breaths. "Before you take over the throne, at the age of 24, I want you to marry the Prince of Lamb, Brandon." My eyes widened and I stood up. "But Grandmother, I'm afraid I cannot agree to that." "Why not, Armani?" "Because I want to marry someone I choose. I don't want an arranged marriage. I want to be in love." "Is that too much to ask for?" Tears of desperation threatening to spill from my eyes. "I assure you, once you meet the Prince Brandon, you will definitely fall in love with him. You don't have to rush into it right away, my darling. Besides, this is the only way you could protect our kingdom. Protect our people from this evil fate that hovers over them. This is your destiny. But I just don't want to be the queen. Ultimately, I let out a deep breath and I gave the best smile I could muster. If this is what it takes for helping our people, then I'm ready. I was ready for the consequences. Yes, Grandma, I am willing to marry for our people, since you put it that way. Not that I want to, not that I'm in love, but I will do it for our kingdom. Deep down inside, I couldn't bear to disobey Grandma, our queen. But I know what's truly in my heart, who I truly desire. Grandma, gentle, ghostly-like hands would touch my cheek. I am so proud of you, and I love you so much, my Armani. She gave a smile, so proud. With that, her eyes fluttered, and vaguely she was starting to disappear. I allowed my tears to flow one by one, and her hand fell from my cheek. She was always good at manifesting herself in the flesh, but her energy was fading away very quickly. She had the ability to go from flesh, and she would fade to spirit until she was no longer there. Your Highness, I was looking out the window admiring the beauty of the sunrise when someone called me from behind. It was a warm, sunny day. The sunflowers and daffodils were in full bloom, their scent seemingly spreading through the entire palace. Butterflies and hummingbirds flew all over the secret garden, competing for the nectar. Yes, Henry, I smiled at the butler. He was quite old, probably older than my father, with gray hair dominating his head, wrinkles all over his face, but he was as a healthy horse. Your father wishes to meet you. I nodded. The smile now disappeared from my face, glancing at the untouched chess pieces at the corner of the room. My mind rolled back to the day I'd last played with it. Checkmate! I've been wearing a trumpet grin as I defeated my father in the game of chess. You are getting better, son, smiling proudly at my victory. He had picked up his black king, scrutinizing his gaze on it. You will make a great king, my son, Brandon. Even better than you, raising an eyebrow. I'd grinned. A heart chuckle had escaped his lips, definitely. We'd been in the middle of our friendly chat when it happened, Father had been smiling at something I said when his eyes suddenly widened. A hand clutched his chest while the other gripped mine, nails digging into my flesh. Father! Panic rose through my chest as I watched him riddled in pain. Brandon, call the doctor. His voice had been barely a whisper, teeth clenched in pain. Little did I know that when I had called the doctor hours later, it would be the worst night of my life. It was a rare heart disease, something that got worse with each tick of the clock, something that cannot be cured, something that was going to take him away from this world. Father had looked completely healthy for the next few months, but then he got more and more sicker, more tired. Dark circles adorned his face, his hair becoming even more gray. With a deep breath, I twisted the doorknob and entered into his room. You called me, Father? Sunlight danced all over Father's room, illuminating to the fullest. The deep red drapes were drawn to the sides upon his request. Yes, take a seat, Brandon. He beamed, relishing the warmth of the morning sunlight as Father's disease got worse. I knew my responsibility as king would grow. He would guide me in every issue, but ultimately the decision was mine. It had been my nightmare to become the king, terrified of the fact that one wrong decision could cost many lives in my kingdom. I sat down on the chair beside him and looked at him expectantly. What is it, Father? Is there something wrong? He merely smiled at the inquiry. Brandon, everything is wrong. It had been for a very long time. I raised an eyebrow, clearly not understanding what he'd said. Evil is trying to thaw the world, my son. We have fought against it for so long, but now I'm afraid I can't fight much longer. I held his hand and squeezed it gently. My son, I want you to be a great king, to protect our people, to eradicate evil from our lands, to eradicate poverty. For that you need to marry the Princess of Econ. I nodded, yes, Father. I will do whatever it takes for my people and my kingdom. He smiled fondly at my words before a slight chuckle escaped his lips. Oh, Brandon, my son, tears welled up in my eyes as he began. When did you grow up so fast? I smiled at his words, scooting closer to him. I will do everything I can do, Father, to protect our kingdom. Just before he could say anything, we were interrupted by a guard. Your Highness, he panted. We don't know what's happened, but the crops at the northern border have all failed overnight. They said it's disease or something. Father glanced at me, urging me to speak. I cleared my throat. Well, give them all the surplus supplies for now. That will be enough for them to last a few months. We can figure out a proper solution by then. Yes, Your Highness. The soldier bowed to both of us and disappeared. After he left, I turned my gaze toward my father. He was wearing a proud smile on his face. I can leave this world peacefully now, Brandon. You are more than enough for the kingdom. Please don't say that, Father. I bit my lower lip. Just the thought of my father dying will break me to pieces. He merely gave a smile at that. I love you. I love you, my son. I am so proud of you. You know that? I do, Father. Yes, I know. Later on, back where Armani she is struggling through the responsibilities of what her grandmother said to her. Everything is so unfair. I closed the door after reaching my room and slid down on my knees one by one. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I made no effort to wipe them away. The words of wisdom, hearing the voice of the whispering tree echoing inside my head, and the chiseled, ghost-like face, and Jake, most of all, was etched in my brain. How is it possible to love and hate someone at the same time? The window was still open, the faded yellow curtains dancing in the morning breeze. It was almost noon, but the sky still remained a shade of gray. Tumultuous clouds filled the sky, making everything seem a little dull, a little cloudy. It always rained in Lamb. It made me quite uneasy, for it was always warm and sunny in Econ. Econ, it has been a while since the sun has shined so bright. I miss my friends back in Econ. I miss my bedroom. I miss my childhood when I was blissfully unaware of the evils around me. Our residence here at Lamb was cozy. But I miss the comfort of home. It has been almost 3 months since we arrived here, and only to discuss the alliance of our kingdom, more specifically to discuss our marriage. I sighed, recalling the day Brandon and I first met. How long do we have to wait? I had whispered to Goddess Venus, the mother who'd shot the coldest glare at me in return. I had been the least interested in the arrangement and had been putting my best effort into finding the flaws of Lamb and its prince. After all, I had despised the idea of an arranged marriage for as long as I could remember. Mother had almost killed me with her stare. Be silent, Armani. At least try to behave yourself when you are outside, because people are watching. The disapproval in her voice had been evident. She'd always tried to show me off as the perfect daughter, and it irked me to the core, pretending to be someone I was clearly not. I remembered opening my mouth ready to criticize the choice of food they served there when suddenly the sound of trumpets blared through the silent room, announcing the arrival of the prince. Entered His Highness Prince Brandon. That had been the first time I'd seen my fiancé, and he almost took my breath away. His dark hair had been disheveled, his eyes the perfect hazel. Upon seeing his smile and reaching for my hand, his beautiful tan skin, he is kind of handsome. Pleasure meeting you, Prince. Pleasure meeting you, Princess. Never had I ever felt that way before. My heart had been beating frantically as if I had just ran 100 miles, and I had felt the heat rush into my face. There had been butterflies in my stomach fluttering around everywhere. I apologize on the behalf of my father for his absence. Nevertheless, he sends his regards. I had sensed a twinge of pain in his words. The King of Lamb had been bedridden for a while. It was only a matter of time till he passed away, I heard. You're right, Princess. He had noted the dazed-off look on my face. I nodded. My uncle and cousins, but the grin on my face had still stayed, of course. Rubbing my eyes, I smiled at the memory. The initial few days had been perfect before I'd realized that Brandon doesn't have any feelings for me. Or does he? At least he doesn't really show it. Or maybe he's hiding it. But I know when you're a king, you have to appear to be strong, not too emotional. I wonder how he really feels about me. I wonder if he really loves me. Even a little bit. Even though I'd poured my heart out to him. I had been walking around the castle of Lamb, taking in the beauty of the palace. I had remembered greetings, every spirit wandering in the hallway as I'd roam. Seeing spirits and talking to them had become an everyday thing for me, so it hadn't scared me when a translucent figure randomly popped from the walls. Poor girl! She had shaken her head in sympathy, with her gaze had landed on me. I'd raised an eyebrow at that. Excuse me, is there something wrong? She let out a small yelp when she realized that I could see her. Then she had covered her mouth and had tried to disappear. Please tell me what is wrong. Reluctantly, the ghost-like figure had told me about how Brandon had been asking his father to put off their marriage, about how he'd said he didn't love her. I scoffed at the memory. How naive had I been? It was too easy to tell he didn't love me. The lack of interest in taking the made-up excuses to cancel our plans Now, I know he's a king and I know he's extremely busy, but sometimes I wonder if it was on purpose. Everything had screamed the fact that he wasn't interested in me. Or am I telling myself that because I know I don't want to go through this arranged marriage? Armani, what has gotten into you? Mother had been furious when I asked her to cancel our marriage. This is the only way we can save both our kingdoms from the evil that is trying to win over. Together we make a strong empire. But Mother, this is not the time to be selfish, dear. Lives of many people depend on your decision. Don't let us succumb to darkness. A faint knock on my door brought me back from my daydream. Yes? It is Rosie. Princess? My maid's muffled voice reached my ears. I hastily wiped away the stray tears on my face, and I took a deep breath. What is it, Rosie? Luckily, my voice didn't come out as hoarse. Your mother wants you to get ready. You have to meet with the prince in an hour. Brandon, how could I ever look him in the face after what happened with Jake? How could I kiss him after my lips had caressed the softness of Jake, the fallen angel, the demon? Oh, I hate to call him a demon, though. It causes conviction in my heart. Me kissing a fallen angel. Princess? Rosie questioned, concerned at my lack of response. Couldn't put off my meeting with him. Yes, I will come down in a moment. I got up and closed the blinds, scaring the crows that was sitting on my windows. What the hell is up with these crows?